What is up, everyone? Sergeant Urgy right here. And today I think I just broke my laptop actually. Because, yeah, my battery is, like, very rude. Oh, before we get to the video, I just want to show you this. 255% available, plugged in. 100% fully charged, even though right here it says it isn't, which is weird. And every time I unplug it, it shuts down. So that's cool. I had a friend that told me that it might explode actually, and the battery is really puffed up. At least that's what happened to them whenever the exact same situation happened to them. But yeah, oh well. Hopefully it doesn't like shut down in the middle of the video. But anyways, today we're reacting to the part 2 of the part 2 of the last part, where I was talking about the road to Cannae. And one of you guys in the comments said that the Battle of Cannae is like one of the most famous in history. So that should be amazing. Currently, I guess it's the Romans that are attacking the Carthaginians, who are like, and Hannibal, who's hiding in this town called Cannae. So that's nice. Without further ado, let us get started.
Some distance north of Cannae, the massive Roman host lumbered forward through the plains of Apulia when the forward element spotted Hannibal hastily abandoning his camp just ahead. The enthusiastic Roman vanguard rushed forward. The pursuit lacked organization, but for once they caught the Carthaginian general off guard, and they were not about to allow him time to consolidate. But while Hannibal's standard did leave the camp, the Carthaginian general was in fact lurking in the...
Oh my gosh, freaking Hannibal is such a... He's such a donkey. Usually I say that in a bad way. He's a donkey in a good way. Like, he's so tricky and messy. Wow, he's just amazing. Like, he does this all the time. He just traps his enemies and just destroys them, and it's just crazy.
forest
And the fact that the Romans haven't picked up on this yet is insane.
Nearby. He lured the Romans into an ambush yet again.
When are the Romans gonna learn? Seriously. When are the Romans going to learn?
Despite their extensive scouting efforts, panic gripped the Romans, and it seemed like another disaster was afoot. But Consul Varro quickly rallied the troops and reformed the lines, managing to beat back the Carthaginians.
Whoa.
Hannibal committed significant forces in an effort to destroy the Roman vanguard and shatter the morale of the Republic's army in yet another ambush. But the legionaries he met on that rainy morning showed the kind of determination he hadn't faced before.
Wait, you Punic dog? So whenever it says the Punic Wars, it's referring to the Carthaginians. Huh. Oops. Okay, hello everyone. Hold on, let me just check something. Okay, yeah, I'm back. And I brought back some cornbread. Anyways, let's continue.
And as a fan of our channel, you should definitely check out our friends over at Curiosity Stream. My personal favorite... Paulus and Varro, that the supply depot at Cannae fell into Carthaginian hands. The two consuls were alarmed by the news, knowing that Hannibal now had the resources to camp throughout the winter with little need to forage or pillage the surrounding area for supplies. This would keep the Carthaginians sheltered and rested, and would undoubtedly help Hannibal maintain high morale among the troops over the coming months.
I'm surprised these Romans don't have low morale, seriously. It described the Roman legions earlier as being really enthusiastic about chasing after him. I mean, obviously, like, he was sort of alone, but you would think that they would have a lot less morale than they do now.
Meanwhile, Paulus and Varro were aware that, with their logistics disrupted, maintaining and supplying their vast army in the field would present numerous problems. From their perspective, a well-supplied Hannibal could now, in theory, try to play for time and prolong the war well into next year, which would give him plenty of opportunities to gain political points and successfully persuade Rome's allies in southern Italy to join him. For the
so the Romans are going to attack
Roman leadership, the thought of a possible cascade of defections on their peninsula was unacceptable. Hannibal had to be dealt with. However, while surveying the battlefield, disputes began over where to fight the planned battle. To the south lay Cannae on a line of hills, with undulated land beneath the hillsides, and a very flat plain north of the river out.
Oh Mike, that's just like a horrible place. They have to cross this really open field where they're really vulnerable. Then, well, I guess it is sort of a good thing, so Hannibal can't, like, sneak his troops, I guess. But it's also bad because, you know, they're out in the open and they're exposed easily. And they can't sneak or anything. And they have to cross this huge river. And then they have to go onto that hill. These hills, that's crazy.
Phidias. In ancient times,
there's no way Hannibal is going to lose. There's no way.
The river itself is suspected to have had a different course, which ran further away from the hills.
Oh, I guess it's a little bit less of an advantage for Hannibal then, but
and the area surrounding it was mostly treeless, cultivated.
Why? I'll be right back. Eclipse wants to come in. Eclipse, come on in. Come on. Let's continue.
Open country, much like today. Paulus wasn't pleased with the ground, arguing that the flat terrain favored Hannibal's more numerous and better cavalry, expressing his preference to move the camp into the hills to the west, where the more broken ground would be more suited to infantry and would restrict cavalry maneuvers.
At the same time, out there, in that little hilly area, I guess, Hannibal would have more opportunities for, like, these ambushes that he always does.
Varro disagreed, correctly pointing out that the legions performed best on fairly open ground, expressing his willingness to give battle even in the open country north of the river, despite Hannibal's superiority in cavalry, but arguing that deploying the army in the undulated terrain south of Aufidius would also suit the Roman infantry, whilst the river and the hills would restrict any extensive Carthaginian cavalry maneuvers on the flanks. Both consuls were clearly concerned about the mobility of Hannibal's cavalry. Varro was certainly more eager to fight, and contemporary sources put this down to inexperience, whilst describing Paulus as the more level-headed of the two. But Paulus's plan was problematic in many ways. The Roman host was very large and was composed of a mix between newly trained troops and more experienced legionaries, which made movements, maneuvers and deployments of the army a slow process, which would have been even slower in the broken ground that Paulus suggested, despite other advantages such terrain would offer. In addition, it is doubtful that Hannibal would accept a battle against a numerically superior army in a well-defended position, unsuited for his cavalry. He would have likely arrayed his troops in the plain below to taunt and challenge the Romans, and if they didn't come down from the hillsides to fight, he would use this as propaganda to show off the Republic's weakness to its Italian allies. Worse, Paulus's plan to move into the hills to the west meant that the Romans would perhaps be forced to wait until an opportunity for a battle arose, and that could have potentially kept the army in the field for a long time. Feeding and supplying so many troops for a prolonged period would have been a major problem, whilst Hannibal now held the most important supply depot in the area at Cannae, and could afford to wait. In addition, it is unlikely that Paulus completely refused the idea of giving battle on the flat terrain, because just like Varro, he understood that the Roman camp was already too close to Hannibal. Therefore, repositioning to the western hills would essentially require them to disengage. But any withdrawal from the field in the face of the enemy was very difficult and dangerous, especially for an army dominated by infantry that faced superior cavalry, who could pick them off piecemeal and potentially cause a rout. Furthermore, despite being in open country, retreating from an outnumbered enemy would be deeply dispiriting for the troops, especially given that the Senate, the army, and the people of Rome wanted to fight and destroy Hannibal.
That's what they do all the time. Oh yeah, we're gonna be really aggressive, and we're like really mad, and we want to destroy them. And each time they lose because of it, is their over aggressiveness, and they're like, I don't know, their overconfidence.
In every sense, the Roman army was now committed and could not easily pull away from the field without a battle. Therefore, whatever misgivings Paulus had, Varro's preference to fight as soon as possible was not at all unreasonable under the circumstances. The two consuls came from very different backgrounds. Paulus was the grandfather of Scipio Aemilianus, who was the principal financier of the famous Greek historian Polybius, the main contemporary source for the Second Punic War. Being paid by Paulus's immensely influential and wealthy family, it is easy to see why Polybius portrayed the consul in such a positive light, claiming that it was he who solely raised the morale of the army and made major efforts to organize the newly formed legions, whilst mentioning Varro only in passing as his colleague, not including him in his writings at all during the campaign until Hannibal was cited. And even then, Varro is portrayed as somewhat of an inexperienced hothead, in contrast to the supposedly more sensible Paulus. This can make it difficult to separate propaganda from the truth. However, it is true that Paulus had more military experience, having previously served.
Yeah, that literally happens a lot, where propaganda always gets in the way, and the real picture is distorted. And that's one. Not to get into a controversial issue of history, but like that's what. Okay, I'm just gonna say something less controversial. I'm gonna bring it down. That's what ticks us a lot in his videos. Like, for example, his videos about oil being like the main cause of Germany's downfall. Like, he dispels all this propaganda that talks about the winter. Those winter memes are kind of dumb. Seriously, just no, stop. The winter memes are dumb, and they're not accurate. But anyways,
as consul in 219 BC and was campaigning in Illyria, but after being involved in a scandal with the distribution of war.
Actually, no, that's not really propaganda. Technically, the winter thing isn't really propaganda. Well, it sort of is, and let me explain why. Because basically the German commanders, they were like, yeah, it's not our fault. It's not us that did a bad job. It's not us that did a bad job planning. It's Hitler's fault, and it's the winter's fault. That's who it is. Yeah, it's not us. We're like amazing holy beings that are just really powerful. You see how that works? But anyways.
War plunder. He was keen to avoid further stains on his reputation during his second consulship in 216 BC, which may have been part of the reason for his cautiousness prior to the battle. In military terms, the Illyrian War was a combined...
And by the way, Illyria is like... Just imagine where modern-day, Croatia and Bosnia is. That's about the area where Illyria is.
Operation between the Navy and the Army, but there were no pitched battles. So despite the demands this campaign must have...
No, actually it's not. Illyria could also be referring to the coastline of Croatia.
Had on Paulus as a general, the conflict in Illyria did not require the skills needed for controlling a massive field army. And since his reputation was embellished in contemporary sources, we have no reliable way of knowing how good of a commander he was. In contrast, Varro was a novus homo, a new man, one of the very few in any generation of Roman political circles to be the first in their family to reach high office. Contemporary sources further smear him by describing his ancestry as humble and poor, claiming that his father was a butcher and that Varro himself worked in the shop during his youth. Despite being described as a brutish simpleton, in reality a new man needed substantial political ability to win elections against opponents from old prominent Roman families and their many clients who voted for them. Varro could not parade the achievements and high status of his ancestors and had to find other ways of making his name.
I wish they would have given the same descriptions to the previous commanders. I mean, like the previous dictator and co-dictator. Because I'm pretty sure these are the dictator and co-dictators, right? I think they are. I wish they had done that with the other commanders. It would have been cool to have more information.
Name known to the public in a voting system that heavily favored the rich, which in a way made him an underdog. This shows that Varro must have been a shrewd politician who managed to gain the support of influential aristocrats and senators, all of whom looked to invest in a candidate that would aggressively confront Hannibal, a desire that was widespread in all political circles in Rome. In addition, changes to Roman laws in 217 BC made it nearly impossible for a consular candidate without military experience to be elected, regardless of the influence and prestige of his financiers. So while Varro never held senior command, considering the serious crisis that Rome was in at this stage of the war, it is reasonable to assume that he could not have been made consul without certain military qualifications. On the second day came Varro's turn to command. He led the army towards a position closer to the enemy, despite objections from his colleague. Hannibal responded by sending out groups of cavalry and light infantry to harass and slow down the advancing enemy column. Seeing the incoming Carthaginians, Varro closed ranks and the column only barely continued to move forward.
Hannibal doing it again. Like, seriously, there's that one expression that goes like, the best defense is attack. Or something like that. Or maybe it's the best attack is whatever it is. But like in this case, Hannibal, he uses just attacking to his advantage. Like, you rarely see him defend, unless the defense is just a distraction for another attack. Like, that's literally what... That's a pattern with almost all great generals, seriously. And great commanders. You saw that with Napoleon. He would attack. Like, even when he was outnumbered, even when he was outmatched, he'd do some kind of distraction, and then attack. Rather than defend. Like, he would use his attack as defense. Rommel did this too. He did this, like, on an even bigger scale, because, like, he was outnumbered way more than Napoleon and Hannibal was. I think Alexander the Great might have done this too, but I don't know all the details about Alexander the Great and his conquests, but I think he might have done that too. But it's really interesting concept that's common with almost all military leaders, I just realized.
A series of skirmishes caused significant confusion in the Roman ranks, but Varro's formed close-order infantry drove back each attack. The sporadic fighting went on until dark.
I wonder if the Romans are doing better because they've learned from the Carthaginians, or because they just have like a good morale and good discipline now, because they know that this is their chance to defeat them finally, and that the stakes are so high. Maybe it's a combination of both.
Without either side gaining an edge or inflicting losses on the enemy. but the Roman progress to a new campsite slowed down to a crawl because they were forced to maintain a constant fighting line, eventually encamping when night fell.
Wow. Sounds brutal.
Paulus, still supposedly reluctant to give battle in this terrain, took charge of the army next morning and continued the advance towards the site chosen for the main camp, marshalling the troops to close the distance with the Carthaginians. Meanwhile, Hannibal was still positioned on high ground near Cannae, south of the river, observing enemy movements without taking any action. The Romans proceeded to aggressively take control over the battlefield. 2/3 of the army remained in the main camp, while the remaining 1/3 of the troops was sent across the river Aufidius. Setting up a second camp showed the determination of the Roman leadership to put pressure on the movement of enemy troops, whilst taking up a position from where they could protect their own foraging parties that ventured close to Cannae. More importantly, this aggressive stance served to build up the confidence of the troops. Hannibal countered by advancing down from the high ground towards a new camp location, most likely the flat plateau atop a ridge.
Everyone just making new camps here and there. There's gonna be like 3 more camps. They're making so many
West of the main Roman camp, leaving a garrison to guard the fortified depot at Cannae. The size of the Roman host was clearly on his mind as he continuously spoke to the men, encouraging them that this is why they came to Italy. Challenging the Romans for control over the battlefield showed Hannibal's belief in victory, which raised the spirits of the men. The new camp was in a fairly good defensive position, overlooking the plain below, with the river nearby offering the crucial water supply. On the
What's that little red dot doing over there?
last day of July, the Carthaginian general ordered the troops to prepare for battle.
Oh god.
The camp was abuzz for much of the late.
So the Carthaginians are gonna be they're gonna be the first ones to attack. There's gonna be the Romans. It just like tells you that how much Hannibal like just believes in attacking.
Late afternoon, as the men sharpened their blades, cleaned their weapons, armor and clothing, wanting to look their best and most intimidating once the battle commenced. Early on August the 1st, the Carthaginian army marched out of their camp. On the Roman side, Paulus was once again in command. He posted covering forces in front of the palisades of each camp, but the legions stayed close to the ramparts and little was done to provoke a battle. Hannibal, meanwhile, took the initiative and dispatched his Numidians across the river to attack the secondary Roman camp. He kept the rest of the troops arrayed for battle, facing the enemy camp for several hours. He exploited Paulus's reluctance to give battle to raise the confidence of his troops by impressing upon them that the Romans lacked the will to fight. Across the river, the Numidians were ordered not to press the camp directly, but to harass the foraging parties, mostly consisting of servants gathering water supplies, and chase them from the field. For Hannibal, this was another way to humiliate the Romans and show to his troops the inability of the enemy to counter the Numidian raid and protect their foragers. Some of the Roman officers felt ashamed with how the day went, resolutely wanting to turn things around, and the troops were especially displeased with the delay. Undoubtedly, the two consuls
They just stood there and stared at each other for a while. Okay.
read the mood of the camp. And on August 2nd, Varro decided to fight.
No, it's gonna end. That's just great. So I guess tomorrow we're gonna see the actual battle of Cannae. Cannae, I think. It's September 30th. Wow. Thank you all for watching, guys. That was really cool. Opening moves, and I guess the next one is gonna be the huge battle of like literally like a battle size of something like 150,000 men. It's gonna be crazy. yeah, I'm excited, so stay tuned. I'm not going to be making another video until probably a few more days, though. Just because, but anyways, yeah, goodbye. Hello everyone, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe to my channel. And, you know, turn on the notification bell thingy. And if you didn't, then make sure to leave a thumbs down. But yeah, that would be greatly appreciated. And while you're at it, go ahead and watch my other videos. They're probably just as good, and if not better than this one right now. Except for my oldest videos, don't watch those. And, you know, subscribe to these people down here, my fellow sergeants. They're other YouTubers that I either know or I have in high regards. Yeah, even my cat agrees. So, thank you for watching, and have a great day.